My beloved child. Someone is smiling because of a choice you made, yet those same eyes are filled with tears. That sounds impossible, doesn't it? But not every tear is born from sorrow. Some arrive when a heart finally recognizes that a long season of waiting has not been wasted. Before this moment slips away, listen closely, because what changed was not louder than thunder. It was quieter than a single breath, and it altered more than you can see. You believed the turning point would look dramatic. You expected doors to burst open, voices to cheer, undeniable signs to erase every doubt. Instead, the moment that mattered most happened when no one applauded. It happened when you chose not to surrender the kindness that disappointment tried to steal. That quiet decision echoed farther than you could ever measure. While you wondered whether anyone noticed, another soul felt hope return without even understanding why. Have you ever questioned whether small acts disappear into the ordinary? Whether choosing patience instead of anger, mercy instead of pride, silence instead of another argument, truly changes anything? Those questions followed you like shadows. They whispered that your efforts dissolved into nothing. Yet some of the greatest transformations begin where human eyes lose interest. The seeds hidden beneath the soil always appear forgotten. Until the day the entire landscape changes because of them. There is someone whose journey has crossed yours in ways neither of you fully understands. Their laughter has often hidden exhaustion. Their confidence has disguised unanswered questions. More than once they nearly convinced themselves that genuine love, steady peace, and quiet faithfulness belonged only to other people. Then something unexpected happened. Without realizing it, they encountered the evidence that goodness still exists. It wasn't perfection they found. It was the way you kept becoming softer instead of harder. That is why those tears matter. Not because every problem has disappeared. Not because every dream has already arrived. But because hope returned where hopelessness once rented every room. The heart can recognize healing long before the mind explains it. And sometimes the first sign of a new beginning is not celebration. It is relief. There were nights when you almost became someone else. You remember them. Moments when disappointment tempted you to stop believing that gentleness had any place in a harsh world. You almost closed the door that compassion kept knocking on. You almost convinced yourself that protecting your heart meant building walls no one could climb. Yet somehow, even with trembling hands, you left one window open. That window became someone else's sunrise. You may never know how many people quietly borrowed courage from watching you keep moving. Most stories are changed by conversations that history never records. A stranger encouraged by your smile. A friend strengthened by your forgiveness. A family member who found the courage to apologize because your example made pride seem too expensive. These moments rarely announce themselves. They arrive like dawn, so gradually that only later do people realize darkness has already surrendered. Still, there is one connection unlike the others. It has been unfolding beneath ordinary days. Two lives growing closer without perfectly synchronized timing. One learning patience. The other learning trust. Neither realizing how much invisible work was taking place beneath the surface. If you could see the whole picture, you would understand why every delay carried hidden purpose. But seeing everything too early would have tempted you to rush what needed room to breathe. Some gifts are protected by silence until the hearts receiving them become strong enough to carry them well. And that brings us to the smile. It wasn't the smile of someone who has never cried. It was the smile of someone who finally believes those tears were not meaningless. Imagine standing at the edge of a shoreline before sunrise. The waves are still dark, the horizon still uncertain. Nothing appears different, until one thin ribbon of light quietly stretches across the water. The ocean has not changed in an instant. Yet everyone knows morning cannot be stopped now. Hope often arrives exactly like that, subtle enough to overlook, powerful enough to transform everything that follows. Perhaps you've been asking why your own heart still carries unanswered prayers if you've helped restore hope in someone else's. That question deserves honesty. Love grows deepest in people who learn not to measure every blessing by its arrival date. The waiting has not been empty. It has been shaping your ability to receive what hurried hands often drop. There is another reason those tears appeared today. It has nothing to do with coincidence. And everything to do with recognition. Somewhere beyond your awareness, another heart has begun noticing the quiet strength you no longer notice in yourself. They are seeing what hardship refined instead of what hardship tried to erase. They are smiling because they finally understand the kind of person you have become. But what they discovered next is something neither of you expected. That single realization is about to change the meaning of every delay you've ever questioned. The realization did not arrive with perfect certainty. It came like the first star appearing before the night fully settles, small enough to miss if someone was only looking for fireworks, yet impossible to forget once it was seen. The one whose smile carried quiet tears began to understand something that had been hidden in plain sight. Every encounter that once felt ordinary, every conversation that seemed unfinished, every silence that appeared awkward, had been shaping a connection neither heart was ready to name. What once looked like scattered moments were becoming a single story. And that story reached farther than either of you imagined. You have wondered why certain doors closed without warning. Why paths you carefully planned dissolved before you could walk them. At times it felt as though life was taking pieces away faster than it was giving anything back. Yet some endings are not punishments. They are gentle redirections that only make sense after enough distance has softened the disappointment. Would you have recognized genuine peace if every wish had arrived the moment you asked for it? That question lingers because the answer is still unfolding. There is a quiet difference between finding someone, and becoming someone who can truly receive another person's heart. The first can happen by chance. The second grows through unseen choices made when no audience is watching. That is where your journey changed. Not in the moments when everything felt easy. But in the moments when kindness cost you something. When forgiveness felt heavier than resentment. When hope seemed unreasonable, yet you carried it anyway. Those choices left fingerprints on your soul. The remarkable thing is that the other heart sensed those fingerprints long before they understood why they felt drawn toward them. They were not searching for perfection. They were searching for safety. Not the safety of never being hurt, but the quiet assurance that honesty could breathe without fear. Perhaps you've underestimated the kind of strength that remains gentle. The world often celebrates voices that overpower everyone else. Yet the deepest transformations usually begin with people who know how to listen before they speak, who choose understanding before judgment. Who leave room for another person's scars without demanding immediate explanations. That kind of presence cannot be manufactured. It is formed slowly. Sometimes painfully. Like a river polishing rough stones until they become smooth enough to reflect the sky. There were seasons when you believed your own wounds disqualified you from bringing light into anyone else's life. You looked at the fractures and assumed they were flaws meant to be hidden. But light has a curious way of finding openings that pride would have sealed shut. The places you tried hardest to conceal became the places where compassion quietly learned your name. The one who smiles through tears has begun to notice that. Not because you told them your entire story. Not because every mystery has been explained. But because truth has a way of revealing itself through consistency. A generous word spoken more than once. A promise quietly kept. A patient response when irritation would have been easier. Character introduces itself long before it speaks its own name. Even so, there is something neither of you has fully understood. You have both been carrying the same hidden fear from opposite directions. You feared that waiting meant you were forgotten. They feared that hoping again would only lead to another disappointment. Neither fear was spoken aloud. Both shaped countless decisions. And yet, without realizing it, each of you began answering the other's silent question. Can I still believe? Can I trust what feels different this time? Can hope survive after heartbreak? Those questions are not resolved in a single moment. They unfold one honest choice after another, like lanterns lighting a path that was always there but impossible to see all at once. Notice how often life changes quietly before it changes visibly. Winter does not announce the exact second it becomes spring. The tide does not ask permission before it turns. Morning does not argue with darkness. It simply arrives. In much the same way, something has already begun shifting beneath the surface of your story. You cannot measure it with a calendar or capture it in a photograph. Yet its influence is becoming impossible to ignore. Small conversations feel more meaningful. Ordinary moments carry unexpected warmth. Even your own heart has started asking different questions, not, why isn't everything happening, but, who am I becoming while it unfolds? That question opens a door few people ever choose to walk through. Beyond it is a discovery that changes the way you understand every delay, every detour, every unanswered prayer. Because the greatest gift was never only about reaching another person. It was about awakening the truest version of yourself along the way. And still, there is one truth waiting just beyond this moment. The one whose tears have become a smile is preparing to reveal something they have carried in silence for far longer than you realize. When those unspoken words finally find their voice, both hearts will see the past through entirely new eyes, and nothing that once seemed accidental will feel ordinary again. Some truths wait patiently because they cannot be hurried. They are like melodies that reveal their beauty only after the silence before them has been honored. The words resting in the other heart have not been withheld out of uncertainty alone. They have been protected by timing, shaped by reflection, and softened by grace. You may wonder why honesty sometimes arrives so slowly. It is because the deepest words carry weight. They are not meant to be tossed into the wind. They are meant to become places where two hearts can safely stand. While you searched for signs in the distance, something remarkable was happening much closer than you realized. Your own heart was becoming quieter. Not because it had stopped dreaming, but because it had stopped chasing every answer. There is a profound difference between giving up and growing still. One is born from despair. The other is born from trust. That stillness changed the atmosphere around you. People noticed it before you did. Conversations lingered a little longer. Smiles felt more genuine. Even moments of silence no longer seemed empty. They became peaceful. What you once thought was weakness had become one of your greatest strengths. There is a reason rivers reflect the sky only when their waters become calm. A restless surface distorts everything. A peaceful one reveals what has been there all along. The same is true of the soul. When fear settles down, clarity begins to rise. That clarity is leading both of you towards something neither of you could have forced. Not an ending. A beginning. The one who smiles through tears has replayed countless memories, searching for the moment everything changed. At first, they believed it was something grand, a conversation that lasted for hours, a perfect gesture, a dramatic turning point. But memory has a gentle way of correcting us. The moment that returned again and again was surprisingly simple. You listened. You stayed present when it would have been easier to rush away. You chose understanding before offering solutions. In a world eager to speak, you became someone willing to hear. That simple gift reached places polished words never could. Never underestimate what happens when another person feels truly seen. Many carry burdens they never describe. They smile while wondering if anyone notices the effort behind that smile. They laugh while quietly hoping someone will recognize the exhaustion hidden beneath it. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not changing another person's circumstances. It is reminding them they no longer have to carry them alone. Without realizing it, you became that reminder. Not because you were flawless, but because you were genuine. There is extraordinary beauty in a heart that no longer pretends to have every answer. Authenticity invites trust in ways perfection never can. Masks impress from a distance. Honesty builds homes where hearts can finally rest. Still, the story is asking something of you. Not effort. Not performance. Not the impossible task of controlling tomorrow. It is asking for openness. Can you welcome joy without insisting it arrive exactly as you imagined? Can you recognize blessings that wear unfamiliar faces? Can you believe that some of life's greatest gifts first appear as quiet interruptions instead of carefully planned victories? Those questions matter because the next chapter will not look the way you expected. That is why it will be so easy to overlook if your eyes remain fixed on old expectations. Think of a traveler waiting for the sunrise while staring only at the western horizon. Morning still comes, but it is missed by someone looking in the wrong direction. Sometimes hope arrives just as faithfully. It simply chooses a path you never thought to watch. The one whose tears became a smile has begun noticing those unexpected paths. A conversation that almost didn't happen. A message that arrived at exactly the right moment. A delay that quietly prevented a greater disappointment. None of these events seemed extraordinary on their own. Yet together they formed a pattern. Not proof that every question had been answered, but evidence that nothing meaningful had been wasted. Even the seasons that felt empty carried hidden purpose. Even the prayers that seemed unanswered were shaping a deeper capacity to receive peace. That realization has awakened a courage neither of you possessed before. It is a gentle courage. The kind that does not demand certainty before taking the next step. The kind that whispers, "I can move forward without knowing every detail." That whisper is more powerful than it sounds. Because fear loses much of its influence when it can no longer convince the heart that uncertainty is the same as hopelessness. And now, a quiet decision is approaching. It will not be announced with fanfare. It may even seem ordinary to everyone else. Yet this single choice will reveal whether both hearts are ready to exchange guarded expectations for genuine trust. The moment itself is closer than either of you realizes. And when it arrives, the smile that once carried tears will be joined by words that have remained hidden until now. Words capable of transforming not only how two hearts see each other, but how they understand every step that brought them here. The heart rarely announces the moment it becomes ready. There is no bell that rings. No voice that declares, "Now everything is different." Readiness often arrives disguised as peace. It is the quiet realization that you no longer need every answer before taking the next faithful step. Somewhere along your journey, without noticing the exact day it happened, your grip on fear began to loosen. What once demanded constant certainty now simply invited patience. That change did not go unnoticed. The one whose smile still glistens with quiet tears has sensed it in ways that words cannot fully explain. They have watched the way you carry yourself after disappointment. They have noticed that your kindness no longer depends on perfect circumstances. They have seen that your hope is no longer fragile, it has roots. Roots matter. Flowers capture attention. Roots sustain life. Most people admire what blooms above the ground while forgetting the unseen strength beneath it. Yet every lasting garden is built where no applause can reach. In much the same way, the deepest parts of your story have been growing where only heaven's quiet wisdom could witness them. Perhaps that is why the next moment feels so significant. Not because it will erase every challenge, but because it will reveal what those hidden roots have been preparing you to carry. There was a time when silence frightened you. You mistook it for absence. You assumed that if nothing seemed to be happening, then nothing was happening at all. But silence has another purpose. It teaches the heart to recognize whispers. The loudest moments in life often fade the quickest. The quiet ones remain. Think about the memories that have stayed with you the longest. They are rarely the busiest days. More often, they are simple moments. A conversation at dusk, an unexpected smile, the warmth of someone sitting beside you without needing to fill every second with words. Those moments become sacred because they remind us that love does not always arrive with spectacle. Sometimes it arrives with presence. That is what has been growing between you and the soul whose tears have begun to change. Not an illusion. Not a passing emotion. A steady presence. One that says, you do not have to earn your worth by pretending to be someone else. How many people spend years searching for that kind of peace? Far too many. Some chase admiration, believing it will quiet their loneliness. Some pursue endless achievement, hoping success will finally make them feel secure. Others hide behind carefully crafted versions of themselves, afraid that if anyone saw the real person underneath, they would walk away. But genuine connection asks for something entirely different. It asks for truth. Not polished truth. Living truth. The kind that says, this is who I am today, still growing, still learning, still choosing love. That honesty has become your quiet strength. It has also become the light guiding another heart out of shadows they never expected to leave behind. Yet there is something they have not told you. Not because they wished to keep it hidden forever. Because they were waiting to see whether this peace would remain when life became complicated again. Anyone can smile during easy seasons. Character is revealed when storms return. And a storm did come. Not one that shattered everything. One that tested everything. Old doubts knocked softly at the door. Past disappointments tried to rewrite familiar stories. For a brief moment, it seemed as though yesterday's fears might reclaim tomorrow's hope. But something remarkable happened. Neither of you responded the way you once would have. Instead of assuming the worst, you paused. Instead of letting fear finish the sentence, you listened. Instead of retreating behind old walls, you left the door open. That single decision changed far more than either of you realized. Sometimes healing is not measured by the absence of difficulty. It is revealed by the new way we walk through it. The storm became a mirror. It reflected growth that ordinary days could never have revealed. The one whose smile carries traces of tears saw that reflection clearly. And in that moment, another quiet certainty settled into their heart. This is safe. Not safe because life will never surprise you. Not safe because there will never be disagreements. Safe because love rooted in truth does not run at the first sign of rain. It stays. It listens. It grows. That realization has been waiting for this exact season. Not last year. Not tomorrow. Now. Yet even now, one final hesitation remains. It is small enough to escape notice, but powerful enough to delay what both hearts long to say. It is the lingering question that so many people carry in silence. What if I open my heart completely, and it isn't received? That question has echoed between you both without ever being spoken aloud. The answer is drawing closer. Not as a dramatic declaration. Not as a perfect ending. But as a quiet moment of courage that will reveal something neither of you has dared to believe until now. And when that moment arrives, the tears that once marked the end of waiting will become the first drops of joy in a story that is only beginning to unfold. There comes a moment in every meaningful story when silence can no longer carry what the heart has been protecting. Not because silence has failed, but because it has finished its work. It has refined uncertainty into wisdom. It has transformed longing into patience. It has taught two souls that love is not proven by rushing ahead, but by remaining true while time quietly shapes what neither one could shape alone. That moment is closer now than ever before. Not loud. Not dramatic. Simply undeniable. The one whose smile once shimmered through tears has begun to understand that courage is rarely the absence of fear. Courage is choosing honesty even while your voice trembles. It is opening a door without demanding to see every room beyond it. It is trusting that what has been built slowly can carry the weight of truth. Perhaps that is why your own heart has felt different lately. Not lighter because every burden has disappeared, but steadier. The questions that once chased you through every quiet hour have begun to lose their urgency. You still wonder. You still hope. Yet those hopes no longer feel desperate. They have become peaceful expectations instead of restless demands. That is a beautiful change. Peace does not erase desire. It redeems it. There was a season when you believed happiness lived somewhere ahead of you, waiting behind one perfect event. You imagined that once the right door opened, once the right person appeared, once the right words were finally spoken, your heart would at last be complete. But life has gently revealed another truth. Wholeness is not a prize handed to those who arrive first. It is cultivated in those who learn to cherish each faithful step. The destination matters. But so does the person who reaches it. If the journey leaves the soul wiser, kinder, and more open to grace, then even the longest road has become part of the gift. The other heart has noticed this transformation. They see someone who no longer measures worth by applause. Someone who no longer mistakes delay for rejection. Someone whose kindness has survived disappointment without becoming cynical. That quiet resilience speaks louder than grand promises ever could. It tells a story words alone cannot tell. Think of an old tree standing through changing seasons. Children have climbed its branches. Storms have bent its limbs. Winters have stripped away every leaf. Yet spring keeps finding it. Not because the tree forces new life to appear, but because its roots have learned how to endure what its branches could not control. You are becoming like that tree. Not unshaken. Deeply rooted. And those roots are giving someone else permission to believe that lasting love is not a fragile dream reserved for a fortunate few. It is something built by ordinary choices repeated with extraordinary faithfulness. Still, there is one memory the other heart returns to again and again. It is not your greatest accomplishment. Not your most impressive moment. It is something you probably forgot almost as soon as it happened. A day when you were carrying your own disappointments, yet you still made room to encourage someone else. You never knew how much that mattered. You thought it was a passing moment. To them, it became a turning point. That single act quietly challenged a belief they had carried for years, that people eventually stop caring when life becomes inconvenient. You proved otherwise. Not with speeches. Not with promises. With presence. Never underestimate the influence of simply showing up. A heart that feels abandoned measures love differently. It remembers who stayed. It remembers who listened. It remembers who chose compassion when there was nothing to gain. Those memories become anchors during difficult seasons. And now, those anchors are pulling both of you toward the same shore. Neither of you has arrived there yet. But the distance between hope and reality is becoming smaller than either of you realizes. There is something extraordinary about the moment just before dawn. The world still looks dark enough to believe nothing has changed. Yet beneath the horizon, light has already begun its journey. No one can stop it. No one can bargain with it. Morning does not ask whether the night is ready to end. It simply fulfills the purpose it carried all along. Hope often works the same way. Long before your eyes recognize it, your life has already begun to brighten. That is where your story stands now. Not at the finish line. Not at the beginning. But at the sacred threshold where hidden growth starts becoming visible. The smile through tears is no longer only a response to the past. It has become an anticipation of what is finally within reach. Even so, one final chapter remains unwritten. There is a conversation waiting just beyond this moment. Not a conversation that answers every question. A conversation that changes the questions themselves. Because once those long-guarded words are spoken, neither heart will ask, "What if this never happens?" Instead, they will face a far more beautiful mystery. What kind of life can two hearts build now that they are no longer afraid to believe? The most meaningful conversations seldom begin the way people expect. There is no perfect script. No flawless timing. No magical sentence that instantly removes every uncertainty. There is simply one heart choosing to be honest, and another choosing to receive that honesty with grace. Everything changes there. Not because every fear disappears, but because fear is no longer the one leading the conversation. The words that have waited through so many quiet seasons finally find their way into the open. They are gentle, unhurried, almost fragile. Yet they carry the strength of everything that has remained true while no one was watching. I've been smiling through tears. Not tears of regret. Not tears of loneliness. But tears that came from realizing something I never expected. That hope was quietly returning before I even knew how to welcome it. For a moment, nothing else seems to move. The world has a way of growing wonderfully still when truth enters the room. There is no need to rush toward an answer. Silence no longer feels like distance. It feels like reverence. How often have you mistaken stillness for uncertainty? Sometimes the deepest response is not spoken immediately because the heart is making room for something sacred. There are moments too meaningful to interrupt with hurried words. This is one of them. You realize that all those seasons spent wondering whether your quiet choices mattered were never empty after all. Every act of patience. Every time you chose understanding instead of resentment. Every moment you refused to let disappointment define your character. They were becoming a language another soul could understand. Long before affection was spoken. Trust was being written. Letter by letter. Choice by choice. Day after ordinary day. Trust has always grown differently than excitement. Excitement races ahead. Trust walks beside you. It learns your pace. It notices who you become when plans unravel. It remembers whether your kindness survives inconvenience. That is why trust often lasts long after excitement fades. And now, both hearts are standing inside something they once thought impossible. Not perfection. Something far more enduring. Peace. The kind of peace that does not depend on having every answer. The kind that remains even when tomorrow has not yet introduced itself. There is extraordinary freedom in no longer feeling the need to prove your worth. For so long, you believed love had to be earned through endless effort. You carried invisible weights that were never yours to bear. You measured yourself by accomplishments. By approval. By whether every plan unfolded exactly as expected. Yet none of those things ever defined the value already resting within you. What reveals the soul is not how brightly it shines during celebration. It is how faithfully it keeps its light during ordinary days. That light has become unmistakable. The one whose smile once mingled with tears sees it clearly now. Not as an impossible ideal. As a place where hope feels at home. Still. Something unexpected happens. The conversation takes a turn neither of you anticipated. Instead of speaking only about tomorrow, you begin speaking about yesterday. Not to reopen old wounds. To honor the distance already traveled. You remember the unanswered prayers that once felt unbearable. The closed doors that seemed unfair. The delays that tested every ounce of patience you possessed. One by one, those memories lose their sharp edges. They no longer stand as monuments to disappointment. They become stepping stones. Without them, neither heart would have learned the wisdom it now carries. Without them, the hurried version of this story might have looked beautiful for a season, yet lacked the depth to endure. Sometimes gratitude arrives long after understanding. It quietly rewrites the meaning of everything that came before. That is what is happening now. The past itself has not changed. But the way you see it has. And that changes everything. As the conversation settles into comfortable silence once more, something remarkable becomes clear. Neither of you is trying to impress the other anymore. You are simply present. There is a rare kind of freedom found in being fully known without feeling the need to hide. Many spend a lifetime searching for that feeling. Few recognize it when it gently arrives. Perhaps because they expect fireworks. When what they truly need is a steady flame. The flame before you has survived wind. It has survived rain. It has even survived the moments when both of you wondered whether it had quietly gone out. Yet here it is. Not consuming everything around it. Simply illuminating the next step. And just as your hearts begin to settle into this newfound peace, a quiet realization rises between you. The journey was never only about finding each other. It was also about discovering a calling that reaches beyond the two of you. A purpose neither heart has fully recognized. A purpose that will ask you not only to receive love, but to become a source of hope for others who are still wandering through their own long nights. That invitation has been waiting since the very beginning. Neither of you saw it then. Now, it is impossible to ignore. And accepting it will lead to the most unexpected chapter of all.